This is Brighter Rays, and we've been looking at a study in 1 John 1 through 4, and we called it Completed Joy, because that's what John says in his letter here. He's talking about he wants his joy, or their joy, to be complete, depending on how you read it. And so we started talking about different joys here, and there's the joy of being a disciple, an eyewitness of what happened. That's John's joy. Really, it's all of our joy, as we are all disciples. Then there was the joy that we're going to be talking about today, the joy of fellowship. So let's get into that right away. So we finally have arrived at the controlling verb of the sentence. That's this, the sentence is kind of confusing grammatically, but we finally get to the verb that is the one that controls the sentence. And John says, we proclaim. And so that's the hinge verb right there. In the joy of his recollection of what he has seen and heard, he reminds the readers of his letter that this is what he has proclaimed. Some think this is a nod to the gospel he wrote if it was written before at the same time as this letter. So some people think he's talking about, this is what he's proclaiming or has proclaimed, because it's past tense, that he's talking about the Gospel of John, which could be. He has proclaimed these things, and so that they, the recipients of the letter, might have fellowship with, quote unquote, us, which is John and those that have seen, heard, touched, and testified, who are the believers, right? So John's heart for sharing what he witnessed is so that people will be in fellowship with him. The word in Greek is Koinonia, which you probably have heard before. Most Christians have heard that somewhere. Some Christian organizations and things like that are called Koinonia. Koinonia is an abstract word that can mean the sharing of something that someone has, or participation, or contact, or fellowship, or intimacy, or a collection, or a contribution even. All that word's been used in all those ways in Greek writings. So John wants this kind of relationship with the people. He wants this sharing and this joint participation. In the Bible, fellowship is a noun, not an adjective or a verb. We say things in Christianese like there's a fellowship meal, which would be an adjective, or let's get together for a time of fellowship, which is something that we're doing. It's kind of a verb. Let's fellowship together. As believers, we are in the fellowship. It's a constant state. It's a noun. This is what we're part of. We are in the fellowship. It's not something we choose to do, and really don't go in and out of fellowship. Either you're in the fellowship or you're not. It's kind of something what we are more than it's not really what we do. We don't have a time of fellowship. We are in a part of the fellowship. It's kind of the same idea of the church. The church is the fellowship, is the body, is the temple, is the household. It's not something that you do. I don't do church. I don't go to church. I don't, hang out in the church. I don't do fellowship. I am I'm in the fellowship. I'm part of the fellowship. That's kind of how it's used in the Bible. So, and that has theological implications if we think about it too, because if fellowship and church are just things you do, then you cannot do them, right? But if it's something who you are, like you are the temple, you are the body, you are the household, you are the fellowship, that means it's part of us. That's our identity. That's who we are as a person. And it's not something we just do or something we participate in. It is part of what makes us who we are. So that changes a lot of different things. Changes how we act, I think, too. But that's a whole nother sermon. But as we look at this, it becomes even more clear as John says, indeed our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. So not only does the fellowship include all believers and witnesses of Jesus, but the Father and Jesus himself are in this fellowship. John recorded for us the prayer of Jesus in which he speaks to the Father about this very fellowship. He says, I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. So if you're a Christian, you are in the fellowship of all believers, the Father and the Son. It's Father, Son, Christians in a fellowship together. That's what it means. So it's not something we do. We don't just do fellowship. We don't just have times of fellowship. We are in fellowship. We are in this fellowship, this partnership, this joint, joint everything together. That's what it means. So we'll stop there for today. And next time we'll look at the joy of being a witness. Because John talks about that. There's a joy of being a witness. And we need to learn about that. So come back tomorrow and we'll look at that.